I think that this new era of AI will mass manufacture thought leaders. I truly think that you will see new writers emerge and participate in stories or topics that were not kind of happening in the past. So one thing that I truly believe is that it's a double-edged sword, right? You will have some great impact of AI, but I think one thing specifically towards PR that I fear is the loss of authenticity, is the loss of true insight. Is there? I think journalists and news publications actually need to have the responsibility to filter out what is AI generated and what is authentic. Because, and I also feel because of this, there is going to be, I think generic commentary is coming to an end. I think if you are giving very, very plain, vanilla, generic, always true statements and thinking that that can become part of an industry story, I think I think that as a journalist or a publication, you have the responsibility to kind of put an end to this. My name is Yash, and I currently head marketing and communications for Waterfield Advisors. And in my role here as the head of marketing and communications, I look at media, I look at social media, digital, web, and events. And my journey has been fairly short, but not very conventional, I would say. I started my first venture as a digital marketing company straight out of college. Actually, not even straight out of college. I was in college at that point, and it was started as a digital marketing agency. So you can say that for the last 9 or 10 years, I have been in this field, and initially on the agency side, and then as I grew, I realized that I needed a bit more structure in my learnings. And I needed to work in an environment that would teach me as much as also give me the entrepreneurial objective. So that's when I kind of moved to the client side. And in that, my journey has been filled with learnings on all aspects. So my journey into PR has been rather recent, if I may say so, and that's why I think that technology and tools that are available today have made it easier for marketers to get a sense of the entire suite of services. So I'm really glad that tools and technology and analytic tools today exist the way they do. So yeah, I think that's a little on my journey so far. So interestingly, I used to think that marketing is not going to be able to make significant difference, especially towards the bottom of the funnel in a wealth management industry. I always thought that wealth management industry is more top of the funnel marketing, which is more brand awareness and education. But I think the beautiful part about marketing is that it all starts at the top of the funnel with storytelling and with the right repetitive techniques and right intervals, you are actually narrowing down your target segment level by level. And I think that for me has been the biggest learning when it comes to Waterfield Advisors. Yeah, I think I used to always think of myself as more creative than analytical. During my early days, I used to think that something that is beautiful will have larger impact. Now, while it is true to some sense that having something creative, something very visually stunning in terms of branding, graphics, as you grow as a marketer in your journey, you start kind of taking a step back and looking at the whole problem rather than just one piece. And what you realize is that success is determined by both analytics and creativity. I also hate when people say that, we're going to optimize, we're going to optimize. There's going to be a pipeline. There's going to be everything will be data driven, and in all of this they miss the storytelling and the creative part. And if you're doing a lot of the other side, then you tend to kind of shoot in the dark, because while you're creating something extraordinary, is it reaching the right people? And do you know if it's making an impact or generating an influence? So I think having both of these things is important. The analytics piece I learned a bit later in my journey as a marketer. But now that I have learned it, I don't think that now I can go back just being creative or storytelling marketer. Because what I have realized is that using data smartly, we've been able to actually see very positive results in the metrics that we are tracking. For example, according to me, I think we have a very decent and good-looking website. When I compare it to the industry, we spend a lot of time designing and developing it. And what I've realized is that while it's stunning to me as a marketer and my team, we are not its audience. We're not the final end users of it. And while our biases are there, and we try to remove as many biases when we were doing the initial research on the user interface and user experience and competition mapping, what we realize now is that the real response or the real feedback is still going to come from the final user. So we are now using data analytics not just to understand the hit rate and bounce rate and conversion rate, but we're also using it to actually help us design better. By using heat map tracking, for example, we are able to actually figure out where is a user clicking where there is no button. Why is that user clicking that? That means that either the user expects something to be there, or our design is telling them that something is there. So that is, we are actually able to optimize so much of our design now using analytics to make the journey more friendly for the user. So I think that's where the fusion of data and analytics for me is so important now and so key. Some of the other, I think, data points that now we're tracking is media, for example, right? So much of our decisions on the kind of stories we want to do, in the kind of journalists we want to maintain relationships with, has been helped a lot through data. This is specifically true when you're a lean team. We're a team of 4 people. We're not even double digit, forget triple, for a lot of financial services companies. And when it comes to a lean team, you need as much easy and comprehensible data that you can get, because you need to prioritize where your efforts are going to go. If there are only a handful of people who are going to strategize and execute, if you know how to prioritize using the data that we're getting, we'll be able to do a much better job. We'll be able to do much greater impact with the same amount of resources. So I think the using data, especially in media, because media is very vast. There are hundreds of journalists in the BFSI sector. There are hundreds of publications that are out there, and because of having presence across India, we also have to take care of local journalists and local publications. How does a small team that is doing everything across the board use kind of analytics to prioritize the effort? And I think that is somewhere where data has played a very, very crucial role for us. On the top of my head, I think an instance that I can recall probably is when we opened an office in Kochi. Now, sitting in Bombay, there were multiple limitations on our access to the Kochi market. Number one, it was a tier 2 city. That means, it wasn't as organized in terms of relevant data available to us. Then the biggest problem was language barrier, because we have predominantly either written in English or participated in stories. But in our research, we found out that a lot of our clientele does read vernacular news. Now, understanding which journalists write great stories would have taken a lot of time had we actually started first researching, then actually translating those stories into English that we could understand, make sense. And while translation isn't perfect, you never get the right tone of it. So I think using a media analytics tool helped us focus our efforts in a geography we did not know anything about. It helped us understand the stories in a different language, the impact of that story, the reach of that story, and and the style of the writing of a journalist, right? I think a lot of this was made available to us non-native speakers through the help of a data analytics tool. So I think that is one instance that I think I can recall where we truly use that data analytics tool very well. I think, and here is where I differ a lot with probably a lot of my peers in the marketing industry. We are a department or an industry that is driven by ROI, right? Everything has to be about ROI. Then you will suddenly see marketers get divided, right? Some would say that brand awareness can never be measured properly. Some say that you've got to optimize for the bottom of the funnel, right? So there's this divide in terms of ROI. Some say that for certain marketing activities, ROI should never be an objective. And some say that we don't do any marketing campaign without having a clear sight of the ROI. I think that in my experience, some of the metrics, I don't have a problem with either method, to be honest. Like, I think both are okay for different objectives. When you want to target bottom of the funnel, there is no point in creating brand awareness, right? So I think both have their place. What I do not particularly like is using incorrect metrics to justify the right objectives. For example, in media, there's this metric called advertising value equivalent. I think it is a highly inaccurate metric, and a metric that has been used by marketers to justify the cost of a PR agency to its leadership. Because when you look at numbers saying that we were able to build 100 crores worth of advertising value equivalent by doing media stories, because and we've only paid say hypothetically 1 crore retainer to the PR agency. Look at the ROI we've developed, 100x ROI. I don't think that's right. I think this AV, so having the wrong metric to kind of justify particular strategy, I think is very incorrect. So I think some of these metrics I don't believe in. So that's why I think the most important metrics that I daily track is competition tracking, because we are not a company that is out there every day. Because we're not a brokerage firm, because we're not a equity research house or a distribution-led platform. We are an investment advisor at our heart. So there are certain guidelines by SEBI in what kind of media stories we can participate in. So so for us, we're not kind of buy this stock, sell this stock, which is generally a lot of everyday commentary. So we like to focus on quality over quantity. And therefore, for me, tracking my own brand every day doesn't make much sense. We're not even a brand that is written about on a daily basis, either on online media or print media. So for me, the most important metric that I track is to keep track of my competition, what they're doing, what are the initiatives, who's being hired, Because all of this is being relayed then to my sales team or my talent acquisition team. The other thing that we are tracking every day is our pipeline. So because we are such a niche industry, the good part about that is I know my potential client by their name, right? There are close to 1,200 people in India with a net worth of 1,000 crores and above. Almost all my team has the name of those 1,200 people. Using the media analytics tool to keep a track of these people, news about them, helps tremendously when we want to tailor a campaign specifically to acquire a particular client. So that's my, second kind of data that I'm tracking every day. Other than that, of course, I am tracking the reach of the stories that we write. We do a lot of authored articles that are taken by tier 1 publications. So we do track the reach of that. And I think that's probably what I'm tracking on a daily basis. I think that this new era of AI will mass manufacture thought leaders. I truly think that you will see new writers emerge and participate in stories or topics that were not kind of happening in the past. So one thing that I truly believe is that it's a double-edged sword, right? You will have some great impact of AI. But I think one thing specifically towards PR that I fear is the loss of authenticity, is the loss of true insight. I think journalists and news publications actually need to have the responsibility to filter out what is AI generated and what is authentic. And I also feel because of this, there is going to be, I think generic commentary is coming to an end. I think if you are giving very, very plain vanilla, generic, always true statements and thinking that can become part of an industry story, I think I think that as a journalist or a publication, you have the responsibility to kind of put an end to this. So as I was saying, I think the era of AI is definitely going to increase the number of new writers you're going to see, contributors to media stories. Because until now, the biggest friction used to be writing. And, we work with senior leaders in our organizations. They have the insight. They just did not have the time. So you would often see that, either ghostwriters were used, right? I'm not saying that these things did not happen in the past, but everything was expensive. I mean, hiring a ghostwriter to write content on behalf of news of senior leaders was an expensive proposition, especially for smaller firms. Using internal writers was always time consuming because either they will not get the tone right. But what we are seeing with generative AI tools is that you can literally instruct it to write in the tone you want, in the correct grammatical manner you want, and it will generate and give it the bullet points, right? What you think, and it will literally come out with something in a split second. Now, when you have that kind of power, imagine how easy it would be to participate in relevant media stories or relevant coverage. So, what is authentic and what is AI generated? How do you differentiate? And I think that for me is a responsibility that a publication or a journalist needs to have. I'm wondering that, can there be a way that, we can figure out what percentage of this article is AI generated and what percentage is authentic? I'm sure we'll be able to figure it out at some point. And I think there are tools that exist which tell the probability of a content piece on if it's AI generated or not. I think those tools will have to get more advanced. And I think going forward, technologies will need to be made in a way that can identify an AI signature in the content generated. So then, I think that's the only way you will be able to differentiate true authenticity from AI generated content. I don't have any problem against AI generated content, because sometimes, the insight is lost because time is not found. So if you're able to actually, dish out quick paragraphs or commentary based on just very simple bullet points that you have insights about, I think it's great. But at the same time, there is a responsibility, of what a true thought leader is, and where is a generative AI using thought leader. That's not it. I think if there was a way you could, and this is purely looking at the future, if there was a way you could differentiate between what is written by an actual writer / journalist / copywriter versus what is written by AI, even after, there are tools that can rephrase what an AI has written to make it more human. I think that kind of a metric would be useful to have. And I think another dream metric that at least I feel is what was the impact of a single article on your lead pipeline. I think if I can track my lead exactly from the news article that it came, I think that would for me be a real dream metric. Because it could be, way back. I mean, maybe they read an article that we wrote 2 years ago, which we are not even tracking anymore in terms of our weekly website conversions or traffic, or correlation between media story and traffic hits. So if there was a metric that was able to tell me, what has been working in terms of where is the final, top line impact based on which article, I think that would be amazing in terms of proving also the ROI of PR as an activity. And I think that is what I think these would be my 2 dream metrics. I think my response to that would be, and this is a two-part response probably, because as a PR professional in-house or a PR professional in a PR agency. And I think, in-house, my advice to PR professionals is do not depend only on your PR agency. I think it is very easy to sign up a PR agency, meet them once a month. They are bringing the story ideas, or you're telling them, and you don't actually have any connect with the journalistic world, right? They are your bridge between the brand and the journalist community. And I think at some point, a lot of people think that hiring the PR agency is the only thing. Like after that, your work is done. You're then basically, but you have missed out on building relationships with the journalistic community. And I think that is something which I advise all budding PR professionals, is to identify great journalists that you like to build relationships with. Read their stories, give them feedback, comment when their stories are great, when you enjoy reading their stories. Identify those journalists, build a relationship with them, and you will start, kind of seeing public relations from a very different mindset. I mean, on a very practical and a strategic level, you will not have to only purely depend on your PR agency, because PR agencies are great when you have the budgets and everything. What if you were to be a marketer who's a hustler? If you're part of this founding team for startup going forward, in its initial days, a startup will never have the budgets for a PR retainer. So when you do go into a startup, or you do become the CMO of that startup, your relationships with the journalists is what's going to matter most to gain that media. So I think that is my one advice, is to build real relationships with journalists and not just be dependent on your PR agency. For outsourced PR professionals who are sitting on the agency side, I think, or budding PR professionals who want to go into an agency, I want to kind of tell them to literally live and breathe their client. I have seen multiple PR professionals who think their job is only that of a messenger. You know, a story idea comes from the brand, they send that out to 100 people, see who responds and takes the idea back, and the transaction is completed. I think the role of a PR professional is so much more than getting coverage. It is to strategize with the internal teams on what kind of stories are relevant for the brand to be part of. What are other things that they can write about? What are quality stories that can be authored from senior leadership? Are these people spending time with the senior leaders, or are they only kind of speaking with the corporate communications head? So I think for the outsourced people, they need to meet the clients, the spokespeople as often as possible, and focus not only on those monthly monitor meetings where they're talking about which story did well, which publication did well. They need to be aware of everything new that the client is doing or the client's company is doing. They need to know exactly what the industry is doing. They need to read the research reports. They need to spend time understanding the industry and the client, like literally that they should be able to answer a question on behalf of the client even before the journalist kind of asks it. So I think those would be my two advice to young budding.